Welcome to Retail Level Up's Moment with Mickey. In today's episode, we have a special guest, a retail entrepreneur who has been in the industry for many years, and I'm so happy to have her, Amy Wolf, from The Dog Spot, which is in Joseph, Oregon. Now, Amy Wolf and her husband, Chef Arion Canniff, opened The Dog Spot on Black Friday of 2017. And the concept is a small cafe focused on fresh-made foods, international fusion flavors, and smaller, healthier portions with wine, beer, and cider, all from the inland and Pacific Northwest. Plus, a small retail shop filled with pet gear and treats, and human clothing and accessories with pet themes. So kind of like a Rainforest Cafe, but with dogs and cats. So please welcome Amy Wolf. Yay. So glad to have you here, Amy.
Oh, excited to be here.
Well, I'd like you to walk our audience through your background because you have a wealth of experience in the retail industry and would like to understand how you, what you've done in the past and how you and Arion came to what you're doing today.
Perfect. I would love to share. So after graduating college with a degree in communications that focused in small group behavior, I still had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. Still not even sure I've decided that completely.
Yes.
But I jumped into retail as an assistant store manager for a large women's clothing company. And I fell in love with every aspect of it. And that was Lerner, New York, many, many years ago, before they became New York and Company. And got to start going through their transition in that process of going from Lerner, New York to New York and Company, which was absolutely fascinating to me. So there was a lot of learning, there was a lot of opportunity, and a lot of growth potential there. I left that company, and I was actually recruited by a former leader to the Disney stores, and absolutely fell in love with working for Disney. The guest service model there is phenomenal. Really great opportunities to learn and grow. The Disney Institute is an amazing opportunity for all of their store managers. And that was a really fabulous experience and really drilled down to that customer service level, which is something that I really enjoyed, not only for the guests coming in, but for being a leader and helping the team grow and develop. From Disney stores, I jumped over to some big box retail and did Office Depot, and worked in a $10 million operation. Just kind of wanted that volume experience. I kept being told it was so different than my little retail stores I was running and managing, and really learned that it's not any different. It's customers coming in and taking care of them on a daily basis and making sure that people are happy and getting what they need. So to me, it was the learn was it's all about the experience. And from there, I joined a great company called Coldwater Creek as a store manager. And by that time in my career, I was really ready to grow outside of that four-wall experience, and was given an opportunity to join the store operations team there in a little town called Sandpoint, Idaho. And it was a perfect timing for me because I wanted to get back to my roots in the Pacific and Inland Northwest and be in mountains and have water, as well as develop my career. So in store operations, I really had an opportunity to dig into all of those behind the scenes things that we know as store managers happen all the time, and we don't know why, and we don't know where it comes from, and we don't see all of that hard work. So being a part of that was an absolutely eye-opening experience, as well as a great opportunity to learn all of the business aspects of retail. So everything, the financial end of it, more than just the four walls, the HR side of it, the marketing pieces that as store managers, we only get a peek at. We don't get to see all of the development. From there, I went to Tommy Bahama in Seattle. Great company. I was in the store operations team, had some great opportunities there. But for me personally, landing in Seattle was not the right course of action, and had to make a decision based on that experience to move again down to the store operations team in Medford, Oregon, working for Harry and David. And that was, again, an amazing transition. And part of that learning experience was about that transition again from, I'm going to say small company. It wasn't small. Harry and David was very, very big. But they had been bought by 1-800-Flowers in New York. So we were going through a big transition of becoming a single entity, but still keeping our own identity. And there was a lot of great opportunities to learn about how this business model of a big corporation like 1-800-Flowers, who was acquiring multiple brands, and how they brought all of those brands together to kind of speak the same message, but still have our own identities. So that was a really interesting deep dive into the corporate experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought us here. So I think that we'll dig deeper into that in a little bit. I would love to share, because this business is a two-person compilation of our passions. So Chef Arion is, he got his training in New Orleans. He went to school there and has a culinary degree and a food science degree. He has sent himself all over the world to travel countries far and wide to learn about how local people cook their local foods and the local ingredients, and just has an amazing passion for sharing all of those neat flavors that we don't find in Oregon, and being able to share those really interesting culinary delights with anybody and everybody who's willing to come in and try them. So we've taken those two backgrounds and his 40 years of experience in the food and beverage industry, and created this fun little business venture.
Well, I've had the pleasure of eating some of Arion's dishes, and I think it was 12, 13 years ago that we had a Coldwater Creek retail operations potluck Thanksgiving at my house, and you guys were responsible for the turkey, and it was the most amazing turkey I have ever tasted or seen. It was beautiful, and the stuffing was incredible. So I was recently in Boise, Idaho for a road trip, and we took the Oregon path to come back up to northern Idaho. And boy, I was really tempted to make a little side trip to Joseph, Oregon, to come and visit you in your establishment, which is on Main Street.
Not a through destination.
Yeah. Well, it's only 5 hours away from me, so I'm planning on a trip. So tell me.
And I know you can do it in 5 hours.
Oh yeah. So tell me what the two of you, what were you thinking when you decided that, I know that you needed to move to Joseph. I think you were going to be there for family reasons, but what was the decision-making process? What caused you to want to open your own business?
So the line I give most of my customers is that we're insane. But the reality is, we had, for over 20 years, we had always tossed ideas around of what we would do if we ever left the corporate world, or if we needed to do something different. And at this moment in time in our lives, we were going through, Arion had some health issues, so he wasn't working as much. I was realizing that the corporate world just wasn't going to be as inspirational to me anymore, and my career path was not as exciting to me. So I was losing some of that interest personally in what the corporate world was going to be able to offer me. We had also lived in after Sandpoint, which we absolutely loved and thought was going to be our forever home, down in Medford, which is a beautiful, beautiful community, but it just didn't have that feeling that we wanted out of a permanent residence. And then, as you mentioned, I had some other family health issues, and just the world was just throwing a lot of darts at our dartboard for us as opposed to us. And to take control of that again and feel like we had some influence on it, we just started kind of spitballing ideas. What would we do? What would we do? And we realized that there were two things that drove us in our lives, and that was always the food and our pets. And so we started saying, what could we do to bring those together? And there was a business up here in Joseph that we were very interested in acquiring. And the owner was finally deciding she was wanting to retire and willing to talk to us. So we opened up those conversations. But as I think we'll talk about with some of the other questions and topics, we will discover that a business plan doesn't necessarily go in a straight line. So here we thought we were jumping into this really great idea, and it's always been this concept of combining pets and food, or pet items and human food, but we're definitely not where we thought we would be when we started developing 4 years ago.
Okay. So how did you decide on the product that you wanted to sell or offer?
Right. So we did a couple of things. We said, we set some standards. I think that was the biggest thing, is just developing the structure around what we were going to do, because both of these industries, the food industry and the pet related product industry, they're huge. They're ginormous. So narrowing down those thoughts and what is important to us. So on the retail side of it, we said, we are looking at moving to Joseph. We want to do a business in Joseph. Why do people shop in Joseph? And the majority of our customer here are tourists. So we rely heavily on tourism. And people come to this area because they want to enjoy the events that happen. They want to go outside and enjoy the outdoor activities. It's a very, very pet-friendly area with camping and RVing, and the people in this area there's probably more pets in homes than people in the majority of homes. And then that's outside of, those are pets. Then there's horses and cows and sheep and all of that as well. I don't do any of those types of products. It was, as we were talking, what is it that we focus on? So one of the things that we did early on is we actually created our business, got our LLC, and went to a pet product expo. One of the largest ones in the US is in Las Vegas in August. And that's just a hop, skip, and a jump from Medford. So we popped on down there to check things out and kind of see, so how do we narrow down what the product assortment is, and what do we decide to do? And that's Lola joining the conversation. What happens when my office is in the middle of the shop as well. And decided that it's so huge, we had to put some really strict parameters on things. So as many vendors and items that we could get out of the Pacific Northwest and Inland Northwest. And that is actually incredibly doable. I was surprised to find out how many amazing companies there are in Washington, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Utah and Colorado even, that do really great pet products. And then, we also said, well, things make us laugh, because humor is very important in our lives. So we have some companies that are across the United States that we use because they have very authentically funny products. And it's always nice to get a laugh. And then we actually took those same parameters and applied them to the food side of the business, and said, of course, we want to bring in as many local type products and really focus on what the offering is in the area. It became very clear early on that that was going to be a lot more difficult than the retail side.
Mm.
So the other thing that we set up in our parameters on what we were going to do was that we had to be as flexible as we possibly could when making these decisions, and I think that flexibility has really paid off over the 3 years in just being able to adapt to everything the world throws at you.
Mm.
But yeah, I also have a really tiny square footage. So as things begin to change, our first business opportunity we were looking at that fell through had a much larger square footage. And as things progressed, we ended up in a building that has a very small footprint. So taking that narrowed product assortment and kind of deciding what the most important things were, we opened with a very, very tiny assortment. I mean, it was key items and key categories. And as the years have progressed, I've added on, I've changed. There's a positive and a negative for this. I don't have a back room, so I have very little storage space, a couple shelves. So I can't buy large quantities of anything because I don't have room to put it, which allows me then to figure out what sells through really well. And I can bring in more, or if it doesn't sell through really well, I'm not stuck with a whole bunch of inventory. So little lessons like that didn't necessarily work part of the original plan, but have worked out really well for us. And we continue to learn and grow as we go through what our customers ask for. I listen to the customer a lot, not all the time, but a lot, and have picked some brands and influenced buying decisions based on the needs of the people and their pets.
So what is your selling square footage of the boutique, would you estimate?
I probably only have about 300 selling square feet.
Okay.
It's very, very small.
Okay. So
I've probably taken over a little bit more this year than I did last year, so maybe I'm up to 400.
Not as much indoor seating, perhaps?
Correct. Yes.
Wow. So the focused product assortment is really key, and the disciplines that you put around that. So many boutique shop owners kind of get trapped in that feeling that they have to answer all the needs, and they start to get creep in their product categories, and they get a little too broad, and then they lose their focus. So it sounds like you have a really good tight control over that, and you don't fall into that trap.
I have found myself every once in a while, if I find a brand that I just love, I sometimes bring in a little too broad of a spectrum. But because I can't do huge buys, it narrows itself down pretty quickly. And then I have to remind myself that, no, we're not replenishing these items, but we're going to replenish these so that I can continue to support those brands, but not kill myself on inventory.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is that you have a local focus. So there's just a very clear story about what you're offering, and it gives your customers a reason, especially tourists, that they want to buy it because it's from that area.
Right. That, and because these particular companies also manufacture their products in the United States, so that was a real positive. Not 100% of the stuff in the building is USA made, but probably about 80% of it.
Wow.
And we try really hard to supply that high quality product, as maybe in the USA labels, and is local-ish. And it's definitely, it is our tourists love that. They come in and specifically ask, well, what's made around here? And around here gets to be very broad when you live in a little tiny town, because nothing is made right here.
Right.
But when I can say Portland or Bozeman, Montana, or right out of Seattle, people get very excited about that, because those are places that they know and have seen on maps as they plan their trips here.
Yep. Oh, that's great. So I know that the first business that you thought about acquiring or going into in Joseph, that didn't come through for you. So how did you select the location? What were some things that you were looking for?
So Joseph is a tiny community, smaller than Sands Point, but that same kind of concept of it's 4 blocks of commerce, and that's it. And the buildings here are 90% of them built very early on in the history of Joseph, and so have been adapted and changed and adapted. So when our first opportunity fell through, we decided there was another small building for sale, and we thought we would pursue that and purchase that. It was going to change our business model quite a bit because it was about a quarter of the size of the original place we were looking at. But it had a big walk-in, and Arion was super excited about that. So we felt we could figure it out. We'll figure out what happens in this location, but we'll own it so that we can make changes. And it was a little newer construction, so felt really comfortable that building had a lot of potential for us. Then that fell through. And, so at that point, we actually said, we're just going to move. We needed to get here. We needed to be present in the community, helping my family with the things that they needed help with. And and I wanted to be done with my job and just have a nice clean break, and then we could focus on what we needed to do when we were here. And of course, when I gave my notice at my company, there was some panic, and I ended up signing a contract to work remotely for a while because I didn't have anything going on. So we moved here. And kind of during this, there was a business owner that I had heard about who was running a little cafe out of one of the storefronts on Joseph, kind of in the block. Like, it is, out of the 4 blocks, there's one that has the most stable community of retailers and business owners. It hasn't changed as much as some of the others. And it is kind of the core of the shopping experience. And so I reached out to her and said, hey, I hear that you might be thinking about wrapping up your business. Let me know what's going on. And she said, no, not at all. I said, okay. So once I signed that contract to work remotely and we started moving, she called me back and said, oh, I am done. What do you want to do? So I said, well, I don't want to miss this opportunity to be in this space because, as we know, location is one of the key elements of a successful business. And this is one of the prime locations on our main street. The building itself was never designed to be a restaurant. It had been adapted and adapted. There's no central heating or air. It is a beautiful, beautiful old building. But it definitely has some challenges, but it has amazing storefront windows and a nice 40 feet of storefront that is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So we developed a contract, and I bought all of the stuff that was sitting in the building from her and negotiated with the landlords to take over her lease. And this became our building.
Okay.
With lots of sweat and tears because it got passed over to us really dirty, and we couldn't walk in and use it. We had to do quite a bit.
Yeah. Wow.
But it was fun, and it actually gave us a real sense of ownership, having to start from the bottom and repaint and clean and scrub and do all of that. And we both kind of enjoyed that part of it. It gave us a chance to really dig in and set things up from the bottom up. So the whole process, we tell people we didn't really choose. We knew where we wanted to be, and we took, without being dramatic about it, but kind of took what was presented to us.
And when was that you signed the deal?
That was in September of 2017.
Okay. So literally 2 months later,
Yeah.
you open.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That, that's a
Well, it
quick
was really
turn.
important. Yeah, it was. And part of that is because we had done a lot of legwork prior to that, thinking that we had other opportunities.
Mhm.
And we never stopped focusing on what had to happen for the business, even when we didn't think we were moving quickly forward. Um, we had a lot of boxes checked on what needed to be done. Um, we didn't open immediately with a liquor license, so it was another month before we could serve beer and wine. Um, but those were, those were things that it kind of worked. It was a slow progression of getting these things open and introducing ourselves to the community.
Mhm.
Um, because although a lot of people here knew who we were because we had vacationed here for 10 years before moving here. Um, there were so many more who didn't. And we were doing something very different
Mm.
in this area. Just the concept of having retail and restaurant in one place, um, doing something that isn't, um, oh, there's no fryer in our restaurant. We don't deep fry anything. We don't have a grill. We don't do burgers. Um, we don't do a lot of things that you will find very consistently in other places.
Mhm.
Um, we're definitely very, very unique in the
Mhm.
area.
Oh, that makes such a difference, though.
Well, it does. It has definitely given us a hook. And as we have said, we're not for everybody. Not everybody is going to want this style of meal, this style of food. But those who find us have been very complimentary and happy with what we're doing. So
Awesome. I love this. So, what kind of marketing did you do in the beginning? And you could include untraditional types of marketing, like what you said about getting to know the people in the community and them getting to know you. But what did you do in the beginning?
So we wanted to be very grassroots, and because we were opening very intentionally during off season. There are 3 months of the year here that are it's like an entirely different town, and that's our tourist season, and that's the summer months. Um, and then those people go away, and it gets cold, and it's beautiful, but it gets very, very quiet. And so we knew we needed to speak to the local population first and foremost. Why we pushed to open so quickly so that we had lots of time before that tourist crowd showed up.
Mhm.
Um, and so we did um, started out by the doors were open when we were cleaning and setting up and people just wandering through. What are you doing? I mean, this is a community where anybody will stop and talk to you. Everybody wants to know what's going on. So, just talking to people as they wandered around it was amazing to me how many days, even when it was cold out and the doors were not wide open, people would just walk in and be like, hey, what's going on in here? Um, but having that conversation with them and letting people know what we were doing. Using those local friends that we had already developed to help us kind of spread the word. Um, uh, reaching out to the local newspaper. There are still newspapers in this area.
Mhm.
People read them on a daily basis. And it is actually a really important communication tool here. So making sure that we got an article in the paper about what we were doing. And I don't think I've yet had to spend money to get anything in the newspaper. It's been we've been very lucky that we've had people on that team there who found us early on and continue to support us by keeping us looped around every once in a while with an article about what's happening at the dog spot. We did use social media. This community has a Facebook page for the county where they post all kinds of things. So we connected our business Facebook page to that so that we make sure we're posting information there. Um, and that was really it. We, we then relied on word of mouth. And so as locals came in and experienced us and had a good experience, we just asked them to share with their friends and to bring in people. And then that first summer, that was what we saw, was our local guests bringing in all of the people that come visit them during that summer season to check us out and see us.
Mm-hmm.
Yelp and TripAdvisor were big tools for us as well, asking people to post about us and to write reviews. And that definitely drew in a lot of people. I mean, people would say, "Hey," and they still to this day, it's like, "Oh my gosh, you've got great reviews on Yelp, or you've got great reviews on TripAdvisor." And
Mm-hmm. Nice.
yeah, we both have some really strong opinions about those platforms that are probably not the most positive opinions, but we use them because we know we need to, and they are definitely great tools to be in the toolbox.
Yes. So, do you do anything different with your marketing now?
Well, we don't read any of our reviews on Yelp or TripAdvisor.
No?
Nope, no, stopped reading those. Our guests come in and tell us, "Oh my gosh, you've got the greatest reviews," and we're like, "Well, thank you." But you learn really quickly that one negative review can bring you personally down and into a bad spot very, very quickly, because I mean, both of us grew up in face-to-face contact generations, and we really believe that if somebody truly has a bad experience or something negative has happened to them, that the best way to resolve it is by speaking directly to a person
Yes.
and getting it resolved and not sharing it with the world, because frequently it is so simple and easy to fix, or it is a misunderstanding. And we feel very strongly that we want our guests to have a great experience here. We also know we aren't for everybody. And I'll say that over and over and over again. And we don't want people to feel poorly about their experience here, but I think that the social media platforms allow people to say things that they wouldn't normally say in real life.
Absolutely.
And so it makes it difficult when we want to be those great hosts to have something like that. And it could be just a weird word that somebody chooses to use. So it's not even necessarily a bad review or something, just the way somebody said something. You're like, "Oh, what?"
Yeah.
So we just ignore those now. That's really the biggest thing we do differently. We still use Facebook a lot for communicating. And we ask people to leave us reviews on Yelp and TripAdvisor, but we don't read them anymore.
Okay. That's a very interesting approach. So you talked a little bit about when you were first developing your plan for your business. So did you actually sit down and write out a business plan?
I did. I did that. I used some local resources as well. So there is a branch of the Small Business Development, SBDC, where I don't know what C stands for, and center maybe, here in Wallowa County. And part of the things that we didn't know were things specific to this county and this area, just financial things that we were interested in. What do people pay per square foot for rent, and so things like that. Where do people go for help when they're small businesses? So I reached out early on to a counselor there, and we had sat down and done some great work together, and then did do a business plan. Part of that was because we thought we were going to have to borrow money to start off with. So the two first kind of key business opportunities, with them following through, we didn't have to borrow all that money, but I had a business plan. So I knew what we were into it for and where we could easily make adjustments. All of that was on paper. It was really nice to have.
Yep.
What I haven't done, I started to in the spring this year, because we thought we were expanding and going to kind of grow our business in more than just the few things we've done so far. And I was going to need to ask for more money, and that was what we were working on in March. And I've just got that to the side at this point. and we'll review it again. But I haven't kept it as developed and probably up to date. For the first year, I actually really tracked numbers in the tools that the business development community gave me. So that was nice to have.
Okay. Do you have a mission statement?
So I was digging around because I know that we had written one, but again, and I can share with you what it ended up being. We don't use it now because it was really designed for that larger space and some other things that we had wanted to do in that space. So it was this simple, creating possibilities for pets and their people. And I think what we've really done is, instead of having a mission statement, we just have those guidelines that we follow. So we, as much product as we can that's in inland and Pacific Northwest. When we can get local product for the food side of the business, we bring produce in all summer long. We try to work with local area suppliers for food. The food and beverage industry is very convoluted and has rules that kind of get in the way sometimes for these small communities.
Yeah.
So we do what we can to honor that. And then on the food side, it's fresh made. Arion does everything from scratch except for the bread and the tortillas, really. But all of his spice mixes, he brings in whole spices, he toasts them, he grinds them, he creates his own spice blends. So it is all made with love from scratch. Nothing arrives in our shop. Maybe 5% of our product arrives in a can, but nothing arrives pre-made.
That's amazing. Wow. So could you share what tools you use specifically on the technical side? Because I know a lot of our audience members are interested in, if they're going to start something, what technical tools do they just need to make sure that they have, and what would be your recommendations?
So to manage my day-to-day business, I use Square.
Okay.
And because we have, my biggest challenge has been finding platforms at the beginning that I could do restaurant and retail together. And Square has a great restaurant side and they have a great retail side. But if you get down into the deep of either one of those, then you kind of eliminate the crossover. So I just use their very basic platform. I think one of my big learnings at the beginning, and as we continue to grow as a business, I'll probably go back and revise this. But because I had that operational background, I made things way too complicated at the beginning. So that was a big lesson for me is, yes, I need to control my inventory. But honestly, even during the summer when I have a couple employees, I'm the person. I do the ordering. I do the majority of the selling. I rearrange the floor. So I know what my product is and how much I have. And so having all of those inventory tools, which even the basic Square program allows me to use, I had made it just a little too complicated and had gone too far into the weeds at the very beginning. The other thing that made that complicated for was when I did hire people was they had a hard time finding what they needed to find. I don't use a scanner. I don't use barcodes. I just keep it as simple as I can. I hand price all of my product when it comes in. And again, I have a small enough assortment and inventory level that's a feasible thing at this point. There will probably, I hope, I'm planning for in the future that I will need to change that and update it to have I'm not going to say better, but a more in-depth inventory control system. But for right now, it is very manageable, and Square does a lot of things. And then when I did start hiring people, I used Square to do all of that HR paperwork, which is very nice. So I still have to do the I-9 and W-4, have those on file. but they file everything else that needs to happen for me at the beginning. So any of the new hire paperwork by state that has to be filed, and then my quarterly tax filings and all of that for payroll. And that has been nice because I don't like I understand it all. I don't like doing the bookkeeping and financial end of it. So having them take care of that for payroll is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what do you use for timekeeping? You also use Square?
I use Square as well. So they have timekeeping, their HR system. And I don't necessarily want you to plug any particular company, but I will say that during this, during the COVID, Square has been incredibly adaptable, and things like cutting fees for those 3 key months where we were all not able to open as a restaurant. I'm sure retail was the same way for them, but just helping support us as business owners on the financial end of it as well was really gratifying, and I was very happy to be with a company that understood the financial implications.
Yes. What do you use? I guess Square for credit card processing, right?
Yes, I do, and part of that is because I wanted to take as many credit cards as I could. So American Express and Discover are 2 that frequently are hard to, or you pay more on for processing.
Right.
Could I pay lower fees? Probably, but because I can take all of those cards and I can run all of my business, so checks and cash, through Square to do the accounting for everything. I only pay fees on what is swiped or tapped or dipped. The one thing that I did do as a business owner during the pandemic issues, and I still, even to this day when we're open for business now, if people want to pay over the phone for takeout food, I ask them if they'd be willing to meet me outside to pay, because we do pay a little bit higher fees on keyed cards. And I am one of those, I'm just honest with people. I will happily meet you outside if you don't want to come in the building, but I'm going to be honest with you, I pay more money if I have to type in your number. And it surprises people who are not in this industry.
Yeah.
They don't understand that we pay to use their credit cards.
Right.
So it's an education service as well.
Great. Any other technical services that you use, third-party services?
I don't. I have a bookkeeper who does my accounting through QuickBooks. So QuickBooks would be the other thing that I get my reporting out of, but I don't personally use it yet. I'm going to have to start. I know. I see it in my future, but it was kind of that decision at the beginning of the business that because we are doing everything, we are the owners and have to have our fingers in everything. There are just a couple things that if you can identify right away that you don't enjoy doing, so they're going to be painful and take you longer, pass them off to people who can do them professionally until you have the bandwidth to bring those into your daily life. Because to pay somebody, it does cost me money, but the time it would take for me to sit down and do that, even though, again, I understand it all, it's not a difficult thing, it's just not fun for me. So
right. Yeah,
I knew that right away.
Those are tough decisions that as a business owner you have to make, that there are certain tasks you don't like to do. And then is it worth it to you to pay somebody else to do that? Because your time is money. And so, but picking and choosing, because, there's certain things that, okay, I don't like doing this, but I'm going to do it because I can, I'm able. Yeah, totally get that.
Right.
All right. So, what was the most surprising thing you discovered when you opened your store?
You were kind and sent me these questions to think about ahead of time, and that was just one that I've been struggling with. There were a lot of surprises. So, and there were some personal ones. I had always said I would absolutely never, ever, ever wait tables again because I hate it, but I'm really good at it. So I've been doing it for 3 years now, and I complain about it constantly. But I'm actually pretty good at it. So,
there was a break there. You said in
okay.
small business is
So
considered.
in the small business world in the United States, a small business is considered any business under 500 employees. And when you are a business with 1 or 2, there's just no comparison. Like, there's no comparison between 2 employees and 15 employees. Like, that's a big jump.
Yes.
So learning how to maneuver in a world where there isn't a designation for a mom and pop shop. Like, you are not, we don't have a standing as a small business community. We are supported by all those same organizations. I mean, American Express has done some great things to help small businesses and sending out information and kits and little floor things, like right now where you can set up your 6-foot apart on the floor. But on the financial side of it, when you talk to organizations, you're just all lumped into this one big group.
Wow.
And that is very interesting, and I thought was very, very surprising to me. I really had no idea. So I think maybe that was my biggest surprise.
So one of the biggest and toughest transitions I have found personally is going from the corporate world, working for other people, working for a business, and then owning the business and being your own boss. And I think that it is one of the toughest transitions, because knowing you are driven, you have high expectations of yourself. You delivered all of your projects, on time or early. You always were a go-to person. And then now you are your own boss, and you have to hold yourself accountable. And there's lots of parts of the business you really don't like to do. How do you motivate yourself to do those parts and get it all done when you're the only one? Well, of course, you do have Chef Arion to, help hold you accountable. But how do you hold yourself accountable when you're the boss?
Yeah, and I'm gosh, my boss is terrible sometimes. She can be so tough. Well, so part of that is, like, the first half of that is it seems to be very cliche, but it's true. If you do what you love, you will love what you're doing, and it's not work. So I love helping pets have a better life. I have joined the board of the Humane Society here because that is such a passion of mine. So the finding that those items and being able to share that with people, and being excited about making a pet's life better, or being excited about helping people show that they love their pets because they can get a t-shirt that says something on it, or whatever, that motivates me in and of itself. Being excited. I mean, Arion does this amazing food, and he's fed me for almost 25 years now. And I absolutely love every meal he's ever made for me. So being able to talk about what he does and his talent, and I tell people I have a wizard in the kitchen. It is those things are exciting, and they are that self-energizing, self-motivating. Getting up every single day and doing it, that is definitely a struggle, but it is also how we pay the bills and are able to do anything else in life. So it, again, kind of becomes that self-motivator. There are days where it's tough. Right now, it's been very, very tough. We shut down in fall for about 3.5 weeks because summer is crazy, and we can't really deep clean and get in the corners during the summertime. So by the end of summer, it's time to pull everything out and scrub and do that more than surface cleaning. Plus, we just need a break to separate ourselves from the business. So I think part of what motivates us is that we know in the fall and then again in the spring, before summer happens again, we take a little time to ourselves.
Good.
This year has been so stressful and so anxiety causing, and had ups and downs, and we have been blessed that we had a very solid summer business wise here.
Yes.
But so we were exhausted when it came to the time, and this last Saturday was our last day of business, and it's been really hard to motivate myself to do those last few things we need to do before we can actually leave town and go on vacation.
That's a
because
motivator.
we're just exhausted, but vacation is. So I think it's developing a process in your entire plan that says it's okay to take time for yourself as a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't ignore that.
Right.
So whatever that might be, if your plan is it's one day a week throughout the year, or if it's a chunk of time at one point in time, it is very hard to walk away from the money that we could be making on these weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And here, especially because the RV parks are still full of people, which is very unusual in this area this time of year. And it's getting really, really cold, so doggy coats are very popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
But by giving ourselves the permission to take that time and go do something, that helps motivate us to get through those day-to-days when you're having the ups and downs, and you're having the days where you're like, I just can't, like me, I am not waiting another table. People can help themselves, gosh darn it.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So any last important tips that you'd like to share with our audience who might be thinking about starting their own business? Any final do's and don'ts?
I think plan. So you'd asked about the business plan. I think plan. And then be really flexible. That plan may not happen anywhere like you think it's going to happen. I think in my corporate career, one of the things I always said was, I have to know all of the rules because I need to know what all of those things are. Because things aren't always going to happen right, and we may have to break a rule. We need to know which ones we're breaking. We need to know which ones can be broken and will survive. You need to know the plan so that when things do go wrong, or maybe wrong's the wrong word, but things go different, that you can either get back on track or adapt the plan to fit the new scenario. And that flexibility is key. If you are just set that this is what I'm doing and this is going to be the outcome, it's not going to work that way. It's just not. And then when it does, so let's say it just all went smooth and it does, then what? Like there's going to be more. So that flexibility is so important, and just knowing that failure is an option, and there are so many things that can happen, and one of them might be failure, and it may just be one little piece is not working right and it's failing. So we go on to the next thing and just accept that that wasn't the right thing.
Good tips, Amy. So if our listeners and our audience would like to learn more about the Dog Spot, they can check out your website at lovethedogspot.com. Or if they happen to be traveling in the Northwest, specifically in the Northeast area of Oregon, they should definitely plan a side trip through Joseph and visit your location at 19 South Main Street.
Absolutely.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. It's so great talking with you and seeing you again. And
you too.
I wish you and Chef Arion a very restful and wonderful vacation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.